turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to hate suffering and attain peace and end birth and death, and quickly realize number.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahudi samyao santutoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahudi samyao santutoshe.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. 师父上人，各位师兄，大家阿弥陀佛。Venerable Master, Dharma friends, welcome to our Sutra lecture today. My name is Heng Shi. It is Sunday, the 24th of September. We are out of Virgo into Libra, and we're about to launch into the Flower Garland Sutras, entering the Dharma Realm chapter, chapter 39, Ru Fa Jie Pian. So if you come for that, you're in the right place. Let me make sure I've got the right optics here. We're auditioning new technology here to improve the sound for everybody. We have folks here with us in person who want to be able to hear, so we're balancing the needs of the folks in person with our broadcast. And I'd like to express my appreciation to the volunteers who helped put this lecture out for all of you. That includes the technology side and also our translators who are making my words in English go out to a Chinese-speaking audience and to a Vietnamese-speaking audience. So much gratitude to folks who are giving of their time and focus and attention to keep the Dharma wheel turning. Let's continue. We're going to do our invocation here. There we go. This is an invitation to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Avatamsaka Assembly. Gremlins. Every time you plug something in, you increase the opportunity for things to go wrong. So. It ain't working. Come on, work. It's supposed to work. I heard a sign. Let's let technology take care of itself and just be sincere. Yeah, let's do that. Nam Furthermore, we would like to respectfully acknowledge the Kumbameri people of the Ugambe language region as traditional storytellers and custodians of the land where we are lecturing. We pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded. 我们恭敬地承认有冈贝语族的哥伦比利人是我们寺院所在地的传统建筑师和守护人。我们向过去、现在和未来的长老们致敬，并且向他们所有从未被祖传的第一民族的原住民致敬。Bells sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传3000界内佛法，扬万亿国中，共修其法界和平，利益报贪我后德。Yes, indeed. We are 10 Dedications chapter, not there. There we are, right there. Okay, what's going on? We're continuing in our hearing of the praises of Bodhisattvas, and the Buddha was speaking last week, and he went through a long list of the virtues of Bodhisattvas and their powers, their abilities, their virtues, and having listed all those, the scene moves on. If we're using language is our medium. I'm talking, trying to describe the way the Sutra gives us the picture. We're in the Jade Grove. Jade Grove is where the Buddha was explaining this text, and there's a pavilion that where he's teaching, and the pavilion is surrounded by, is full of bodhisattvas, these amazing exemplars of how good people can become, kind of the best possible humans. The bodhisattvas, they're unselfish. They've devoted all their energy to helping people wake up, to getting past pain of all kinds, suffering and misery. They have done that themselves, and they want us to learn how to do it. So they have come to study from the Buddha, who's the expert. And they fly in from all 10 directions, make offerings, make praises, then sit expectantly. The Buddha, before he begins the teaching, mind you, he himself has a lot of things to say about bodhisattvas. That's what's going on now. And if this were a video, if this were, Walt Disney Presents, or, Miyazaki, a Miyazaki Avatamsaka would be wonderful. You could see it then. I wouldn't have to try to use language to explain it. You could understand. The bodhisattvas are now about to release clouds. And clouds are a wonderful medium because they disperse, they scatter, and they pervade. They cover everywhere. And I don't want to give you spoilers. I want you to be able to experience it. But the clouds that they release are just magnificent, brilliant. Let's take a look. We ready? go. We'll read down to here, and that will take us to there. Okay, ready? Here we go. 尔时诸菩萨得不思议正法光明，心大欢喜，贵于其身，其意楼阁，诸庄严具，并其所作狮子之作，遍施多林一切物中，化现种种大庄严云，充满一切十方法界。所谓于念念中放大光明云，充满十方，悉能开悟一切众生。Okay. At that time, the bodhisattvas attained the inconceivable light of proper Dharma. Their hearts rejoiced. Each of them made by transformation great clouds of offerings from their own bodies, offerings from the decorations on their towering pavilions, from the lion thrones on which they sat, from everything that pervaded the Jada Grove, offerings that filled up the Dharma realms of the 10 directions. That is to say, in every thought, they released great clouds of light that filled the 10 directions and could enlighten all beings. So the clouds that they're releasing, what they're putting forth from their bodies, are offerings. They're giving stuff. This is generosity. They're giving to the Buddha. I won't, again, I'm not going to spoil it. Let you hear it first. But I think the way to hear this, to make sense of it, is to let the words happen in your imagination. We have a benefit by having language as our medium, which is the pictures happen inside. If it was a manga, if it was an anime, Japanese animation, if it was a Pixar extravaganza, the pictures happen on the screen, and you have to use your eyes to experience it. When it's language and there's the communication, the trick is it has to go from the page here through your eyes or through my voice into your ears. Then the pictures happen inside. But we have the advantage of how many thousand years of humanity, tens of thousands of years of humanity, where storytelling was the way imagination lit up. And I get to be the storyteller today. I'm hoping that there will be other folks who follow, who pick up this, the joy of being a vessel for the light of these wisdoms to go through from the page or from memory. You know, ideally, imagine if we had memorized the sutra, so that it just, we didn't have the book, but it just comes right from my nature into your, through your ears into your imagination. So that's the magic that can happen when the connection is made. Let's take a look. So, Bodhisattvas got the Buddha's light. Their hearts rejoiced. They were happy. You don't want to run past that too quickly. Their hearts rejoiced. The Bodhisattvas were really happy to be in the Buddha's presence, to hear the words that he said just above. The Buddhas were praising and extolling Bodhisattvas. They talked about their virtues, and they used all kinds of languages and expressions to praise them. So all these Bodhisattvas present in the Jada Grove could see the Buddha's light shining. So this light is bathing the Bodhisattvas. Their hearts are made happy. Then, okay, here's the next scene in our film. By transformation, great clouds of offerings came from their bodies, from the decorations that would be here in our Buddha Hall at the Gold Coast. You could see maybe these ceiling louvers or something, with the mantra going around it. That's an adornment. And it's as if clouds of offerings were coming from that and that, filling the air, from the lamps hanging down, from the Buddha images themselves. Then, from the seats they were sitting on, they're called lion thrones. Let's see, we had a Chan session here not long ago, and Dharma Master Heng Lai was sitting in the big Dharma seat, and sure enough, there were lions carved on it. That's a lion throne. If you're sitting on the back of a lion, everybody is going to be very polite and listen to everything you have to say, because a lion might decide to eat you if you don't. So it's not fear, no, it's respect, it's awesomeness. So symbolically, you take the lion and carve it into the wood of the seat. So from those seats, offering clouds came out. Everything that pervaded the Jade Grove was a source of offerings, filled up the Dharma realm, the 10 directions. So now, what do we get? A long list of clouds of offerings. Yes, indeed. So, I'm going to go down through these, and it's nice that we have this microphone to amplify the images and the pictures. So please, So we'll just let the tradition, the simplest is the best, and the traditional way is one person's mouth to your ears. That's the way it works. So these images are going to be flying by from the Buddha's mind, explaining the Avatamsaka, through the Sanskrit that it was written down in, the Chinese it was translated from, and the English translated from the Chinese. Ideally, all these images, all these languages vanish, and the images go deep. Let's see if that works. We'll do, let's see here. We'll go down to Yu Yan Yin Sheng down to here, which is languages and voices. Okay, we're going all the way down. Kai Wu Yi Qie Zhong Sheng. Okay, here we go. We'll start right there. Okay, here we go. Chu Yi Qie Mo Ni Bao Ling Yun Chong Ma Shi Fang Chu Wei Miao Yin Cheng Yang Zan Tan San Shi Zhu Fo Yi Qie Gong De 出一切音乐音，充满十方，音中演说一切众生主业果报。
Sorry, 法师原来是我们。
Oh, sorry. There we go. Thank you. Okay, you can read along. 出一切菩萨种种愿行，四相因，充满十方。 说诸菩萨所有大愿，出一切如来自在变化因，充满十方，演出一切诸佛如来语言音声。All right, go. They released clouds of mani bells that filled the 10 directions, gave off subtle and wonderful sounds, praising and extolling the excellent virtues of the Buddhas of the 3 periods of time. They released clouds of symphonic music that filled the 10 directions, its sounds speaking about beings, karma, and retributions. They released clouds of the actual manifestations of Bodhisattva's vows and practices that pervaded the 10 directions, clouds that talked of the great vows of Bodhisattvas. They released clouds of the Thus Come One's sovereign transformations, clouds that pervaded the 10 directions and spoke with the Buddha's Thus Come One's languages and voices. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the bells have to do with ears. Symphonic music has to do with ears. Vows and practices and the talk of them has to do with ears. And the thus come one's languages and voices have to do with ears. This is all talking about language. And Master Shenhua, our founder, was a young man when he had a vision of a bodhisattva came to him. Who came to him? It was Guan Yin Bodhisattva. And later, a vision of the sixth patriarch, the great master Huineng Dashi, both of whom came to him and said, in the future you're going to the West and you're going to explain the Dharma, and a lot of people are going to learn from you. And when it was Guan Yin, he was a young boy at that time. And Guan Yin pointed behind him, Master Shenhua, who was just a young boy named Bai at the time, looked behind him and he saw this long line of people. And it was scholars, and it was the wives of scholars, and the husbands of scholars, and it was children and their playmates, and it was laborers, and it was elders, and they were Asian, they were American, they were people from the whole world were in a line, not just people. There were various other living beings who were there to learn the Dharma. So, sure enough, in 1962, Master Hua came to the US and started, took a while to get settled, trying to find the Buddhist lecture hall location, and it took 6 different locations in San Francisco to set up the actual Buddhist lecture hall that opened to folks who wanted to come and hear the Dharma all the time. And he began to teach there. So the key for the communication to happen was, of course, language. Master Hua spoke Mandarin and quite a bit of Cantonese, but not that much English. Translators were needed. We needed to find people who could hear his Chinese and explain it in English. So here were these young Americans, many of them students, many of them hippies, who, for some reason, listening to Master Hua's Chinese, were able to make sense of it in English for their friends sitting in the cold Buddha Hall in San Francisco. And bit by bit, these translators got better. They could find themselves speaking Chinese. Interesting. They could sort of make sense of the Dharma, at least to be able to say the 3 of this and the 4 of that and the 5 of that. And bit by bit, people drew near Master Hua so that the obstacle of language vanished. It wasn't an obstacle anymore. And this was something that Master Hua really put effort into, was the technology to make sense of what he wanted to say. We were among the very first to pick up computers of the religious groups that we were in touch with in the Bay Area. We had the very first Osborne computer, which was made by Mr. Osborne in Fremont, across the bay. We had the very first Toshiba 100 laptop. We used K-Pros and Digilogs and CPM and MS-DOS, all before Windows, before Microsoft ever came out. We used WordStar. And this means nothing to people who aren't baby boomers, but this was cutting edge back then. And all of it was used to make that communication happen. Look at bells, music, talk of the vows, languages and voices. this is all that process of communication and how Master Hua overcame that obstacle. When you go to where Chinese Buddhist teachers congregate, they talk about Master Hua as Lü Mei Gao Seng, the noble monk who came to the West. And he is not the only one. In fact, in San Francisco, in New York in particular, those two places, both coasts of the US, and I might add, Master Hua came to Australia first, before he went to the US, but didn't have the translators. And the people, he was here for not quite a year and went back to Hong Kong because it wasn't working. People were not able to hear what he had to say. So, other Chinese Buddhist monks came to San Francisco, to Los Angeles, to New York, New Jersey, places, Canada. But of all of the various monks who came, there was one who drew a Western audience, Master Hsuen Hua. And he did it by emphasizing communication, translation. I've been to small temples in New York's Chinatown where these very, distinguished Chinese Buddhist monks would look at me, a Westerner, in Buddhist robes, and say, I just wish we had somebody who would translate what I want to say. He said, it's really painful, he said. We have these folks walk in the door and they look around and they're very interested and they want to know what the Buddha is and they want to know what the Sutra is. And I use my hands and I invite them to lunch and they put $1 in the box and they're gone. That's it. That's all. And he says it's just can't communicate. The obstacle of language is just too much. And so it's very painful because these are folks who would love to speak Dharma for Westerners, for anyone who comes in. But without the language obstacle, without overcoming that obstacle, you can't do it. So here we have bodhisattvas bathed in the Buddha's light, filled with joy, who want to give. And they're doing it through the medium of sound, filling 10 directions, north, south, east, west, intermediate, above and below, praising the Buddhas, talking about karma and retribution, so that people recognize that karma is not all bad. There's also good karma and good rewards as well. It's up to us what we plant. The clouds of sounds that talk about the vows of bodhisattvas, like Master Hua coming to the West and saying, we're going to translate the Avatamsaka Sutra and all the other sutras into all the languages of the world. And sure enough, we have over 300 volumes published so far. Clouds of the thus come ones, sovereign transformations. Sovereign here means according to their thoughts. If they can think of it, they can do it. 自在. Clouds that pervade the 10 directions and talk about the Buddha's languages and voices. Yeah. Hard work, but this is where the Dharma communicates or doesn't. If it doesn't communicate, what is it? It's a foreign religion that's mostly superstitious and belongs in a museum or a history book or a comparative literature text, but it's nothing you have to worry about. Once the language communicates, then it's like, oh, huh. And yet, it's funny, does it really communicate? We were yesterday sitting over in our library, figuring out how ChatGPT 4.0 can benefit our translation efforts. And I think this is worth talking about here briefly. I know we want to move through the text, but this is very interesting. From the beginning, computers benefited by speeding things up and making things convenient. So speed and convenience. The fact that in a single device, a single computer, you could have a calendar, a to-do list, a phone, a movie projector, a photo editor, a word processor, a spreadsheet, and a database, all in this one device. You click on that, and up comes the database. Click on that, and up comes the video editor. That's convenient. And before the computer, that wasn't possible. The other thing is speed, of course. You can crunch numbers, you can process text, etc. Those two things. So AI and artificial intelligence and the tools that it gives us promises to do that at a bigger scale with language. Scale that you can essentially access every English word ever put online, and every Polish word, and every Japanese word ever put into digital format. You can access it all and find a pattern and put it back out. So that's fast, that's big scale. Does that help you communicate? Is a question. And yesterday we had a test of that. So let me quickly run through it because I think it's interesting, and it's an argument that you want to consider. When Master Hua established the Buddhist Text Translation Society to take charge of the translations and communications of Dharma that he was working on, that he made his vows around, he gave us 4 committees. First was the translation committee. The translation team looks at the original, in this case original Chinese. For the Chinese it was the original Sanskrit or Indian languages. Then we're looking at Chinese, and also if it's available, Sanskrit. And you put the rough translation into English. You rough it out. The second committee, the second team, is called the editing committee, and they go through and they check and make sure nothing's been left out. Nothing's been duplicated, nothing is incorrect. So the editors have to know the original language as well as the target language that they're translating into. They look at both and they make sure that the text is complete and accurate as can be given the original. The third committee is called the polishers. Their challenge is to know the target language and to put the edited, complete, accurate text into the target language that people actually speak. They need to know a little bit of the original language, the source language, but not their job is to really be fluent in the way people actually talk and read and think. They're fully immersed in the target language culture. Then the fourth committee, they're the fourth team, are called the certifiers, and they say, yes, the principles here have actually tally with the Buddha's wisdom. Of course, that's a harder job. You have to be another level to work on the certifying committee. But the work that we have been doing on our Avatamsaka Sutra retranslation committee is largely the third job, the polishers. It's called, in Chinese, it's called the Ren Si Bu. You take what was essentially Chinglish, which is often the editor leaves you with Chinese syntax with English words pasted on it. It's accurate, it's correct, nothing's missing, nothing extra, but it's its own language. It's not what people actually say. The third job, okay, we tested yesterday. We took a raw piece of Chinese sutra text and clicked, ChatGPT went, there it was. Wow, not bad, and fast. Wow, there it is. And if you look at it, we would look at it and go, the word in Chinese for this is shengying. It's not home yet. It's food that hasn't been chewed, much less digested. The words are there. They're pretty close because what AI does is it looks at previous translations, if you have enough of them, database, and it says, oh, here's a pattern. Probably, I think this will be this. It's predictive. It looks at patterns. And boy, it does it so fast. And if you didn't care about the work of the third team, the polishing, it would be impressive, because you can take an entire sutra text or a commentary text, which haven't been touched at all, and render it into English. That is pretty close. So here's the rub. Here's the point of telling this story. Without the work of the polishers, you can wind up thinking, you know what? The Buddha doesn't really speak English. The Buddha doesn't really speak French. The Buddha doesn't really speak Spanish. The Buddha really doesn't speak Portuguese or Australian English. He's got his own language, and we have to change our understanding to get what the Buddha is trying to teach us. Maybe we never will, because it's foreign. He speaks a different language. The polishing team's job is to go through and go, okay, that's not the right choice. Here's an example. These are some of our favorite examples. If you have the word miao shan, wonderful goodness, wonderful goodness. Miao shan gongzhu was the name of Guanyin Bodhisattva in the legend. The princess, wonderfully good, wonderful and good. At one point, we would have translated the miao part as awesome. And what is awesome? Awesome means it gives you a sense of awe. You kind of go, wow, like that, in the face of something awesome. When the sun, there's a setting sun that hits El Capitan in Yosemite National Park, and it's awesome. It turns it into a gold, and it's just astonishing. You go, wow. Once you've seen it, you never forget it. So at one point we were thinking, translating miao shan gongzhu, awesome and good. And then David Rounds, our late editor, said, no, we can't use that word anymore. Awesome can't be used anymore. Why not? He said, well, it's changed. It's changed its meaning. How do you know? What do you mean? He said, well, I went into Black Oak Coffee Roasters this morning, and the barista asked me what I was having, and I said, I'd like a soy latte, and he said, awesome, dude. So he said, awesome has lost its awe. It's not awesome anymore. It's become something else. It's become essentially just approval. And it's lost its power. So we have to find a different word. Well, ChatGPT doesn't know that. ChatGPT can give you awesome, and it's perfectly fine. And yet, given the time and the culture, that doesn't work anymore. Another example is the word bao in Chinese is like zhu bao, bao zang. Bao zhu means precious, valuable, special, rare, extraordinary, not normal. Bao, something that we value it. So valuable is probably the best translation for bao. And often, because the Wei Giles dictionary, or the Matthews Chinese English Dictionary, which was the dictionary where we first all learned our original Chinese translation, uses the word precious to translate bao. And so many of the Buddhist Text Translation Society translations use precious for that word bao. Now, before J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy was made into a film, many people had no particular connection with the word precious. But after Samuel Jackson made his incredible trilogy of Lord of the Rings, we met the character Gollum. Gollum was a fallen hobbit. He had killed someone, pursuing a ring, the one ring in the darkness to bind them. The ring that Sauron wanted. Once he had the ring, he could control all of Middle-earth. And so Gollum saw it and killed for it and lost what made him a righteous hobbit. And then he lost the ring in the caves, and he kept saying, "My precious," and hissing, "My precious," talking about the ring of power. And anybody who's seen it, and those films won the Academy Award, 10 Academy Awards, the word precious has got that resonance in it of Gollum, this sad-looking, dehumanized hobbit going hissing after his precious. So in the culture, after it has been changed by these influences, words change their meaning, they change their value. And so if we have an alternative to precious for bao, and I would select valuable, there we go. We definitely want to do that to avoid having the picture in your mind of Gollum when you hear precious clouds or precious Dharma. So the point is, ChatGPT or any other AI tool is going to have a difficult time finding the resonance inside the culture at the moment. It may not be able to. Only a human, alive in the moment, in the culture, in touch with language, can pinpoint the right way to translate any particular term. I have one more, and then we're going to get back to the text. And that was the word piety. Sadly, 孝顺, filiality, filial respect, filial regard. The early translators of that word called it filial piety. And piety, I was explaining this the other day in my other lecture series, and Bogdan from Poland said, my grandmother's generation, piety was a virtue. Piety was good. It meant that you were faithful. So piety in a religious context meant that you were a good Jew. If you were a pious Jew, it meant that you probably had a copy of the Torah by your bedside or maybe in your backpack. And you checked with the prophets. You checked with the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, the Pentateuch, before you made a decision, because you were talking to God. That's piety in a religious sense. When it moved into the culture, after in America in particular, Puritans were pious, and it meant you were uptight, you were stiff, you were inflexible, you had no humor, you were in Chinese 教条主义, you were rigid and a hardliner and an extremist, evangelical Pentecostal, tends evangelical, right? So the idea was piety meant no fun, no humor, no humanity, hard-hearted. That was piety. And filiality has nothing to do with that. Filiality is the foundation of virtue. Master Hua gave it to us as our first curriculum for children in our educational program. What does filiality mean? In Chinese, 知恩报恩. You recognize when people have been good to you and you want to repay their kindness. You accept the kindness that warms your heart and you want to move it through. You want to pass it on. You want to continue the kindness. Nothing to do with piety at all. But that word got stuck on filiality. We were looking yesterday at or 2 days ago at a story about Guanyin Bodhisattva in her incarnation as Miaoshan Gongzhu, the wondrous, wondrous goodness. The princess, wondrous good. And the translation on the title of the book was Filial Piety. And you just think, oh, nobody wants it. Nobody wants to pick up filiality if it means being pious. So there's another example of how language gets stuck in the culture. And if it is, you don't want to make that mistake. Make another choice. Pick another word. So that's an idea about how I haven't seen any artificial intelligence tool that can give you that feedback about what is acceptable in the culture at the time. So translation is still a human process. Moving on. More clouds. Let's get some clouds. Ready? Here we go. 出一切菩萨相好庄严深云，充满十方，说住如来于一切国度，出性次第。出三世如来道常云，充满十方，现一切如来成等正觉，功德庄严。出一切龙王晕，充满十方，与一切诸香。出一切世主身云，充满十方，演说普贤菩萨之横。出一切宝庄严，清净佛刹晕，充满十方，现一切如来转正法轮。They released clouds of bodhisattvas' bodies, clouds adorned with subtle characteristics that pervaded the 10 directions and explained the successive order in which thus come ones appeared in all countries. They released clouds of the bodhimandas of the thus come ones of the 3 periods of time, clouds that fill the 10 directions and make appear the adornment of excellent virtues of the Tathagatas as they accomplished impartial right awakening. They released clouds of dragon kings that filled the 10 directions and rained down a multitude of fragrances. They released clouds of the bodies of worldly hosts that filled the 10 directions and described the practices of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. They released clouds of jeweled, adorned, pure Buddha kshetras that filled the 10 directions and revealed thus come ones, turning the wheel of proper Dharma. How about clouds of dragon kings? Whoa. How about one dragon king? Oh, here come clouds of it. The dragons, of course, have a lot to do with rain or its absence. And they're sending fragrance, perfumes. What do you suppose? Shiseido, Estee Lauder. Yeah, so clouds. Look at, these are bodies. These are physical, another sense. The ones above were sound. This is physical. Clouds of bodies that explain how Buddhas appear. Interestingly, this is like Buddha Dharma is full of wonder. And every now and then you think it's just kind of boring meditation, pain in the knees, and something will pop up that just makes your mind go. The next Buddha is known, his name, his land, when he's going to show up. The Buddha after him is known, his name, his disciples. The 1,000 Buddhas of the adorned eon are known in order. The ones going backwards are known. 7 Tathagatas in the past are all known, leading up to Shakyamuni. So it's like, what? Who set that out? Is it fixed? Is it fated? How does that work? Right? So the successive order in which thus come ones appear in all countries, it's named, it's out there. Okay? Clouds of bodhimandas, clouds of places. These are monasteries, they're practice places. Fields of awakening, bodhimanda. Clouds of them. And the Buddha's virtues as they wake up fill those bodhimandals. Clouds of dragon kings. The bodies of worldly hosts that fill the 10 directions. Clouds of Buddha lands that fill the 10 directions and show the Buddhas turning the wheel of proper Dharma. Practices of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. One more. 是诸菩萨以德不思议法光明故，法应如是。初心此等不可说，佛刹微尘数，大山巅庄严云。Because those bodhisattvas experienced that inconceivable Dharma light, they gained a response from the Dharma. The response brought forth ineffable, spiritually transformed clouds of adornments, as numerous as dust particles in Buddha-kshetras. Okay, the light of the Buddha brought about all those responses, clouds of adornments. So the thing about dragons, there's another one. There's one of those, right? You go, yeah, well, I come to Buddhism because it helps me get past my problems. I really understand myself better when I see myself in the light of Dharma. I don't want to hear about your dragons, you superstitious Mahayana Buddhists. People, we see that quandary at the Berkeley Monastery every Thursday night. Thursday night for the last 27 years has been the night for the East Bay Insight Meditation Community. Used to be known as Spirit Rock East. And mostly, they're pretty much all baby boomers, 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. They're, many of them are Jewish, many of them are psychotherapists. They, by far, the number one career or occupational index that brings people to study Buddhism is psychotherapy, for sure. So, looking at the mind, when they come in the Buddha hall, they meet dragons. There are dragons on the windows. There are dragons carved into the altar. There are dragon motifs in the lamps. Lots of dragons. And our Buddha hall is decidedly high church. It's not Protestant. The Protestant Methodist church I went to took Jesus off the cross. It took the pictures out of the stained glass windows. We had one simple cross on colored glass. It's iconoclastic. They don't want the images. So our Buddha hall, and the Catholics, on the other hand, had Jesus suffering on the cross and beautiful stained glass stories. We loved looking at the lambs and the kings and the lights and stained colored glass. Beautiful. So Protestant Buddhism has none of that. We are Mahayana, and we have Buddhas inside motes of dust turning the wonderful Dharma wheel in 10 directions, and clouds of offerings, and dragons coming out of every direction. So it's a challenge to make sense of that. And mind you, I grew up, as I say, Methodist. This is all, I learned it secondhand. Do I understand it? I'm sympathetic to it. I'm open to learning more. I was raised scientifically, and science wants to measure. Science wants to categorize and to know. That's how we advance. We analyze down to the smallest, and from that we extrapolate to the biggest. So, okay, inquiring minds want to know. However, all of that approach to knowledge is relatively new in human history. And if you want to know the experience before science, go out with your backpack and your tent onto a mountaintop at night. Turn off your light. What do you know? I know there's some noise over there in the dark. I know that I'm waiting for the moon to rise because I just heard something that sounded scary to me. And it's really cold and I hope the sun comes up, right? So it takes very little to break through our thin veneer of knowledge, thinking that we've got a handle on nature, and we don't. We broke it. You think we broke it on purpose? No, we broke it because there was something in us that was stronger than our reason, which was our greed. We broke the weather with our greed, and the results are coming due. It's happening. And, yep, I don't think we did that on purpose. We did it because we don't understand ourselves. We haven't spent the time looking in to identify, oh, that's greed, and that's a poison. Oh, that's anger, and it's a poison. Oh, that's delusion, that's a poison. We haven't got that far in understanding ourselves. Much less do we understand the natural world, where dragons actually exist, where gods, the dragons in the Eightfold Pantheon, are there keeping the Dharma wheel turning. Now, do I see it? No, I don't see it. I'm reporting the lore that I've heard. But every now and then, you get a clue. You get a sense that those two worlds, the veil between those, the world we see and measure and the world of reality in layers, in reality in dimensions, they interpenetrate. So I did a pilgrimage at one point in my training as a monk. And with my monk companion, we were passing the Vandenberg Air Force Base, Central California. Vandenberg Air Force Base is the ICBM site that is tasked with protecting all of Los Angeles, our second largest city in the US. And also San Diego. And, there is another base further north that works with San Francisco and East Bay. But Vandenberg is it. Vandenberg is a huge, huge military complex. And as we were passing through, there was a major storm. There was a huge, huge storm that was flipping over the 18-wheeler semi-trailers on the highway. Highway 5 couldn't pass because trucks have been tipped by the wind. And there were floods, the freeways were impassable. It was a spectacular storm. This is 1978. And because we were totally dependent on people driving out to meet us periodically and give us news about what was going on in the world, we didn't know. We were bowing. I was silent. I didn't talk. And we were by the side of the road. And this is the area just south of Vandenberg. It's called Nipomo Mesa. And it's pretty remote. And we didn't see anybody for a week. Nobody came out. We had no idea what was going on because where we were bowing, it was dry and calm. There was no wind, there was no rain, there was no storm. And we just bowed along. We had no idea. And so came a Saturday, and this pickup truck pulls up, and this old guy named Jason said, "Oh, there you are. Wow, we were so worried. We thought you guys might have drowned. We thought you might have gotten blown off the highway." "Why? What are you talking about?" He said, "The storm. You didn't know?" "Storm? What storm?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "Oh, the base commandant." He said he was out in a Jeep inspecting the bounty. His Jeep blew over and he died. They blew him out of his Jeep and crushed him. This big storm. And then down comes an old station wagon from the north, and Master Hua gets out of the car. And here's our teacher. And the old layman in the pickup truck is like, "Oh, is this you? Nice to meet you, sir. Pleased to meet you." And Master Hua says, he said, "Okay, we just wanted to check." And so we said, "Shifu, the storm?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Big storm. But you didn't feel it, right?" "No, we didn't even know, Shifu." He says, "Look up." We look up, and there's blue sky overhead in a circle. And he says, "I told the dragons to take care of you." He said, now don't look. He said, you saw it, don't look. And he said, don't get it in your head. Pay no attention. You just bow. As soon as you look, that's climbing on conditions. He says, don't be proud. He says, just do your work. You know, we're like, okay, sure, we won't look. So, do you believe it? I don't know. But the base commander died in his Jeep, and yet we didn't know there was a storm. So, dragons, clouds of dragons giving forth, they're raining down fragrant, assorted fragrances. I don't know. So, I'm saying those worlds, what's the difference and how do you know? When we wake up, it'll be evident, we'll see it. That's what I know. And many hundreds of thousands of men and women have done so. And when they do, they report the same, that the Buddha's description of the world of reality beyond the dual, beyond the mind that has to know and count, and that we see ourselves bound into this prison of the self. This is me, this is mine, that's you, and that's yours. That's the thing that blinds us to the reality of the connection. So, anyway, so when we hear, the point of that story is, I want to be clear that this is, I'm reporting what I've been told. And yet I have this interest in it, and I'm open to learning more. There's so much more to know. What our consciousness holds is just a teaspoonful of all it is. So cultivation is for the purpose of removing those limitations so that the suffering that people are experiencing we can appreciate, and if we have a way to put an end to it, we can share through the communication, through the medium of language. So, may it be so. Meanwhile, I wanted to give us a chance to cultivate the other side of that wisdom, which is the blessing side. And this is one of the finest of, let's see here. There we go. The finest exposition of the blessing side, where things work out, that I've found. This is the Mangala Sutta. We'll have to break regularly to scroll, because I want you to be able to join me in singing. It's the singable part is easy. The singable part goes like this. We do it twice. That's right here. We go. These are the highest blessings. These are highest blessings. Want to try it? These are highest blessings. Simple, huh? These are highest blessings. Okay, you'll know when to come in. I have heard at one time the exalted one staying at the town Shravasti, residing at the Jada's Grove in Anathapindika's park, in the dark of the night. Radiant Deva illuminated all around. She bowed down low before the Blessed One, and standing to one side she said, Devas are concerned for happiness, we ever long for peace, and the same is true Please tell us what are the highest blessings. Okay, that's the Dharma request, right? She has now asked the Buddha for his wisdom. And the Buddha said, avoiding those of foolish ways, associating with the wise, honoring those worthy of honor. Here we go, ready? These are the highest blessings. These are the highest blessings. Living in places of suitable kinds with the fruits of past good deeds, guided by rightful way. Your turn. These are the highest blessings. Highest blessings. Accomplished in learning and craftsman skills, with discipline, highly trained, speech that is true and good to hear. Highest blessing, 是为最吉祥. Providing for mother and father's support, cherishing family without piety, ways of work that harm no being. Here we go. These are highest blessings, Chinese. 是为最吉祥. Generosity and a righteous life, help to relatives and kin, acting in ways, leave no blame. These are highest blessings. Highest blessings. Steadfast in restraint, shunning evil ways, avoiding intoxicants, dull the mind, and heedfulness in all things that arise. These are highest blessings. These are highest blessings. Respectfulness and humble ways, contentment and gratitude, hearing the Dharma frequently taught. Highest blessings. Highest blessings. Patient and willing to accept your faults, seeing venerated seekers of the truth, sharing the words of Dharma. Highest blessings, Chinese, here we go. 是为最吉祥. Ardent, committed to the holy life, seeing for yourself the noble truths, realizing Nirvana. Highest blessing. Highest blessing. Although involved in worldly tasks, unshaken, mind remains beyond all sorrow, spotless, secure. Blessings. Highest blessings. no victory wherever they go. And for them, every place is safe. Last chance, these are life's blessings. These are life's blessings. Words of the Buddha with the 12-string guitar. That's the way we roll. Okay, wanted to share something. Talking about blessings, who would think that books are a blessing? This came up in our lecture on yesterday morning on the series of Master Empty Cloud's picture biography that we're investigating every week. And if you want to find out more about it, go to our website. Jin Wei Shi is going to be sharing that with us in a bit, so if you'd like to listen in. What came up, I'll show you. I'll show and not tell. Ready? Here we go. Oh, right there, right there. Let's look at the picture first. Here is a young man. His name is Xiao. This is the future Master Empty Cloud. He's 13 years old, 14. He's got a hairstyle typical at the time. This is the last days of the Qing dynasty. He's in his dad's library at home. There's incense burning. Notice there's books here printed. There are scrolls here that you roll up. He is doing something special, which we take for granted. What you're seeing is his imagination turn printed words into pictures in his mind. There's magic in eye to page, right there. And then what happens in his head, or her head, when you read those words. That's magic. And we take it for granted because it's how we have learned for as long as there's been printed words. It's under pressure and could vanish. Not only because people read very little anymore, but also because there are political forces at work, typically repressive forces that are afraid of people thinking for their own, that are banning books. This is happening in the United States. I don't know as much in Australia. But autocratic, dictatorial regimes fear free thinking. So they have to control what people read. The lessons of 1984 are very much at play. So, what is going on here? This is part of the story of Master Empty Cloud's childhood as he grew to an adult. And here he is finding out about Guanyin Bodhisattva for the very first time. The storerooms of his house were full of old books, meaning a library. He found a volume called Xiang Shan Zhuan, which described a story about Guanyin Pusa, a miracle story where Guanyin was a princess, Miao Shan Gongzhu. Oh, she was a young girl. He read the story of the miracles that she engendered with her righteousness, and he decided to do what? To go become a monk, to cultivate the way. He developed values from this experience because here it says he didn't want to be a public servant, a rich official who wears a purple cord, meaning the symbol of power and authority, nor did he want to have a door painted red in his house. Who has a red front door? Rich people, rich families. Poor farmers don't paint their doors red. He decided to lead a life of simplicity so that he could resolve to practice pure and lofty ideals. So, how powerful is a book? His life's course was determined by the book that he found in his dad's library. Master Hua, Shifu, put a verse forward. He said, in Chinese, a beautiful verse, he says, Fa pu sa xin wu ben ran, xiong huai zhuang zhi ling xiao han, er jin yi you xiang shan zhuan, ru gong zhi zhi wang hou xian. He says, resolving his thoughts on the Bodhi mind, actually it's Bodhisattva's mind, Pu Sa Xin. He understood his fundamental source. He embraced this ideal firmly, and it went beyond the heavens. His resolve was true. Now, says Shifu, there's another story to Xiangshan Zhuan, which is the story that began with Master Empty Cloud, by which others will be inspired to seek sagehood in the future. So books allow us to pass on our thoughts, not just to the person you're talking to or who watches you, but later generations. That's the power of books. They can wake us up. They can transmit ideas, values, inspiration that you can't get any other way. So I wanted to share this because I, myself, was profoundly influenced by books. My father's bedside reading table was the place where I learned. It was my window to the world, and unfortunately a lot of the window was pretty smudgy because there were lots of Ian Fleming novels, every one I read, and John D. MacDonald and Louis L'Amour westerns and all kinds of awful stuff that was great fun to read, but it gave me a twisted, distorted, maybe toxic view of what it meant to be a grown-up male adult. Excuse me, sorry, cough right into the microphone, why don't you? So I also found there Jack Kerouac's Dharma Bones, and that was my very first encounter with the words of Dharma, Diamond Sutra, enlightenment, Satori. And then On the Road. On the Road introduced me, Jack Kerouac's novel again, introduced me to Jaffe Ryder, who turned out to be Gary Snyder, the actual author and poet, who gave me directions to my first experience in Zen Buddhism in Kyoto. Gary Snyder told me to go find Irmgard Schlegel, and I found Irmgard Schlegel, and she said, don't go to Daitoku-ji, they won't accept Westerners, go to Antai-ji, ask for Uchiyama Roshi. So I did, sure enough. So that was this, I had a similar experience, not as profound as Master Empty Cloud. I didn't find Guanyin Bodhisattva's story, but I found enough of a seed of Dharma that sprouted and led me on the path to Gold Mountain Monastery. I determined to leave a trail behind me of books better than, for young men, than Ian Fleming. Not anything wrong with Ian Fleming, but when you're trying to build your life as a responsible citizen on James Bond, kiss, kiss, bang, bang, it's a little distorted. So anyway, just wanted to say that we shouldn't take for granted the power of books and hang on to them. They are a blessing. They may well disappear before our eyes and we won't know where they went. Just to let you know. All right. Jinwei Shi, I'm going to bring up Berkeley Monastery. You want to tell us what's going on?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone. Here's Jinwei at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. And Namaste, you opened the website. Yeah, we are here. And the first announcement is here is the Dharma Run Buddhist University event, an outreach event. And it's a very special one, and a very addressing the current challenge, what we're facing, or a lot of uncertainty with a new tool, what is AI. And we have a special guest, what is Nipun Mehta, founder of Service Space, good friend of the monastery. And I think he will be in dialogue with some young people from the university, and they together want to explore this topic, AI, and how the AI can be potentially used for good, for goodness. If this is an open question still, and I think this will be quite fascinating. So is the like you see, is the free online event, 5:30 to 6 p.m., 6:30 p.m., Tuesday, October 3rd.
Okay.
Highly recommended.
Oh, there's Nipun.
Yes.
Alrighty.
And we have already Stephen Taylor, one of the teachers who teaches from years at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, just started a series of his classes. And in this semester, he's teaching about cultivating virtue and looking from different perspectives, different traditions, and so on. It's online. You have to, if you want to join, you need to, here is the Zoom link. So you can just go for it. And many people are highly appreciate Stephen insights and ability to really make sometimes very difficult concepts very clear and very relevant for our lives. And
indeed, yeah. There's a generation of people who owe their beginning in cultivation to Stephen Taylor.
yeah, from early 70s, even some follow-up. I think these are quite amazing that how he deeply cares and about the teaching and transformation of others. And the next one is, Dharma, you mentioned already one of the stories from your lectures. So if you want to learn more stories and about this extraordinary being, Master Xu Yun, and directly about the roots of our lineage, and his opportunity on Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. California time, and Dharma Master will continue of this
6 a.m. on
journey.
mornings here, 4 a.m. if you're in China or Taiwan.
And the last one is the Great Compassion Mantra dedication of merit. And this actually is going to happen tomorrow in the morning, 6 a.m. California time. We will recite, Jin Foshe will join, myself and Chin Yangshe, all our Sangha, and we will recite 21 times Great Compassion Mantra. And Jim Foshe will share some reflections about this topic and encourage everyone to continue. And it's happening once a month. In the end of the month, we transfer merit from the month of recitation, and I think there are in hundreds of thousands. The numbers of recitations are just mind blowing, and sincerity of people is just inspiring. So if you want to be part of this group, you can find you can join, and also the Vietnamese translation will be available, and you can use the Zoom link, or will be streamed on our YouTube channel. And the very last one I forget to say, Dharma, is your lecture is 10 transferences chapter on this will be also tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. and is held in the city of 10,000 Buddhas channel. So you see the links, and if you also can use the Zoom, you can use YouTube, and you can spend another evening with this amazing text, Avatamsaka Sutra, and Bodhisattva path can be much more closer.
Okay, Jim Weisher, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. And bon voyage to you as well.
Thank you. Amitabha.
Amitabha. Gold Coast Dharma Realm events starting up. I'm going to gcdr.org.au, and here we have our 1000 Buddha Repentance starting up on the 29th. That's 5 days from now on a Friday. It's that that week be bowing the Qian Fo Chan, like the 10,000 Buddhas repentance, only this is 1,000 Buddhas. So if you want to know more, let's see, Sam, how do we, here it is right here. There's the 3-day 1,000 Buddhas repentance and the 7-day Sharanga mantra recitation. Here's the poster, beautifully done. Okay, and the information is here. I'll let folks, here's all sessions live on Zoom. Go to gcbr.org.au and then scroll down here on the home page and you'll find out more. All right. Anything to correct, Sam? That's it? Okay, good. There we go. Dedication of merit time. Here's our song. Invite you to join in. It's the dedication of merit is collaborative. We do it together. It's a practice. This happens to be musical, but what matters the most is our hearts. Taking the goodness that comes from joining here, whether you're online from Vietnam, whether you're in Sao Paulo, Brazil, or Dublin, Ireland, or here in the Gold Coast. We can use our hearts, that place in the air where they touch, and make a wish. One of our senior elder bhikshunis, Bhikshuni Heng, is transitioning to the Pure Land as we speak, and I'm going to be dedicating merit on behalf of Bhikshuni Heng, the very first person, very first Westerner I'd seen in precept robes, made a deep, deep, deep impression on me, so I owe her a lot. Here we go. If people hear and see, our hands and hearts can find fleeting beauty. May our hearts awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to may kindness find reward. May all sorrow in their hands. Its boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all compassion and one. May all become compassion and we'll bow the Buddhas 3 times. Welcome to join me. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. All right, see you all next week. Amitofo. Bye now.